Again, good morning everyone. This is the second part of the lesson 6 of English literature. This is Jody's Fawn. In the first part of the lesson, we have learned that how Jody's father had killed the doe and how the fawn was left alone after the death of his mother, and how Jody had expressed his wish to bring the fawn home. He went to the jungle with Millwheel to bring the fawn home, and he was looking for the fawn at that time. Now let's see the remaining lesson. Movement directly in front of him startled him so that he tumbled backward. The fawn lifted its face to his. It turned its head with a wide, wandering motion and shook him, though with the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. It made no effort to rise or run. Jody could not trust himself to move, so finally Jody found the fawn, and he was watching the fawn. The fawn was a little scared. He was looking at Jody with his liquid eyes, and it was quivering means shaking. The fawn was shaking slightly, and Jody can easily lift the fawn in his arms, but he does not want to take risk, and he could not trust himself to move. So Jody whispered, "It's me." Jody said to the fawn, "It's me." The fawn lifted its nose, scenting him. He reached out one hand and laid it on the soft neck. The touch made him delirious. He moved forward on all fours until he was close beside it. He put his arms around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. Stir means moved. So when Jody said to the fawn, "It's me," the fawn lifted its nose, because animals have the power to sniff also. So he was scenting Jody, and Jody quietly put his hand on the neck of the fawn. The touch of Jody made the fawn excited, delirious. So at the last, what Jody has done, he put his arms around the body of the fawn, and a kind of convulsion, a kind of shivering can be felt in the body of the fawn, but the fawn did not move. He stroked its side as gently as though the fawn were a china deer and he might break it. Its skin was very soft, it was sleek and clean, and had a sweet scent of grass. So Jody was, touching the fawn so delicately, like it was the china deer, and if Jody will touch it forcefully, the fawn can break. Its skin was very soft, and a kind of scent can be sniffed at that time. He rose slowly and lifted the fawn from the ground. Its legs hung limply. They were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the fawn as high as possible under his arms. So finally Jody put the fawn in his arms. So his legs were a little long, and it was a little difficult for Jody to lift the fawn in his arms. But he has to lift the fawn as higher as he can, because the legs of the fawn were long. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. So when Jody has to take the fawn from the same place where the doe was killed, Jody was afraid at that time that when the fawn will see the carcass of its mother, he can bleat. Bleat is a sound of a fawn. He can kick also. He skirted the clearing and pushed his weight into the thickets. So Jody has cleared his way to go with the fawn. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. It was a little difficult for Jody to walk with the burden of the fawn. The fawn's legs caught in the bushes, and he could not lift his own with freedom. He tried to shield its face from prickling vines. Its head bobbed with his stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of its acceptance of him. He reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to the intersection with the road home. He stopped to rest and set the fawn down on its dangling legs. It wavered on them. It looked at him and bleated. So Jody was completely, walking with the burden of the fawn, and it was a little difficult for him, because during the way the fawn's legs which were long, they were caught in the bushes as well, and he was not able to make his legs free. Jody was trying to save the fawn from the vines as well, and finally Jody brought the fawn to the intersection of the road, and where he stopped with the fawn and he was resting. So what he has done, now Jody set the fawn on its legs, and they both were resting at the time. And after that, the fawn started bleating up when he looked at Jody. He said, enchanted, I'll carry you after I get my breath. Because why the fawn was bleating? Because Jody sat it on its leg, and Jody said to the fawn that I will carry you, first of all let me take the breath. He remembered his father saying that a fawn would follow if it had first been carried. Jody has remembered that his father said once that if you carry a fawn in your arms, then it will follow you. He started away slowly. The fawn stared after him. He came back to it and stroked it and walked away again. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. So when Jody has remembered that his father has told him, if you will carry a fawn, then after that the fawn will follow you. So slowly the Jody started walking, and the fawn was still steering Jody. Jody came back to the fawn, and again he was walking. So in a minute only, the fawn was crying piteously, and it was willing to follow him. The fawn wants to follow Jody because the fawn belongs to Jody. He was light-headed. Light-headed means unable to think clearly, and Jody was too happy that he was not able to think anything else. He wanted to fondle it, to run and romp with it, to call to it to come to him. Jody wants, Jody was too happy. He wants to play at the time with the fawn. He dared not alarm it. Alarm means frighten it. Jody was not daring to frighten the fawn. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. It seemed to him that he walked without efforts. Now again Jody, hold the fawn in his arms, and he was walking without efforts now. His arms began to ache, and he was forced to stop again. Now his arms were itching at the time, and he stopped. When he walked on, the fawn followed him at once. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. So what was happening when they were going to the home? First of all, Jody, hold the fawn in his arms. When he was tired, he put it back on the earth, and then the fawn started following him. So it was happening that for some times Jody was holding the fawn in his arms, and then after that the fawn was following Jody. The distance was nothing. He could have walked all day and into the night carrying it and watching it follow. So Jody was too happy. He loves the fawn too much that the distance was nothing for him. If someone would say at that time to Jody that walk throughout the night, throughout the day by holding the fawn in your arms, Jody would do that, because it was too delighted for Jody to watching the fawn, to follow him, to holding him. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew through the June morning, cooling him. So because he was walking, Jody was walking with the fawn in his arms, so he was wet because of his sweat, but a light breeze was there in the month of June morning. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. The sky was completely clear. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. Now Jody came in the clearing. That means they were not in the forest, and it was completely clean after the night's rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set down the fawn to manage it. And now finally Jody knows how to manage the fawn. Then he had an idea. He would walk into the house, into Penny's bedroom with the fawn walking behind him, but at the steps the fawn balked and refused to climb them. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with his closed eyes. Now Jody went to his home, and the fawn was following him. When Jody has to go to his father's room by climbing the steps, so at that time the fawn refused to climb the stairs, and then Jody picked it up in his arms, and He went to his father's room where his father was laying with closed eyes. Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him. The fawn clutched hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as the fawn's. He said, "I'm glad you found him." When Jody had shown his father that he has brought the fawn home, so Jody's eyes were brightened at that time as the eyes of the fawn, and Jody's father said that, "I am glad that you found the fawn." Jody then went to the kitchen. The fawn wobbled after him. A pan of morning's milk stood in the kitchen safe. The cream has risen on it. He skimmed the cream into a jug. He poured milk into a small gourd. He held it out to the fawn, and then Jody went to the kitchen where the milk was there and the cream was there on the upper side of the milk. Jody skimmed the cream into a jug, and then he poured the milk into a gourd. He held it out to the fawn. It butted it suddenly. Smelling the milk, he saved it, precariously from spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk or in the gourd. He dipped his fingers in the milk and thrust them into the fawn's soft, wet mouth. It sucked greedily. When he withdrew them, it bleated frantically and butted him. So Jody was feeding the fawn at that time by using the fingers, by using his hands. He was feeding milk to the fawn, and the fawn was bleating at that time. He dipped his fingers again, and as the fawn sucked, he lowered them slowly into the milk. The fawn blew and sucked and snorted. The fawn was also very happy when Jody was feeding him. It stamped its small hooves impatiently as long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk. The fawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamily. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. Its small tail flicked back and forth. The last of the milk vanished in a swirl of foam and gurgling. So when Jody was feeding the fawn by using his fingers, he could feel the tongue of the fawn in his hands, on his hands, and at that time, Jody was satisfied and the fawn was also satisfied. The fawn was feeling very safe in around Jody, because Jody has brought him from the jungle and now he was feeding the fawn, and a cute and a very pure relationship can be seen between both of them. And that's how Jody brought the fawn home, and this is Jody's fawn only. I hope the lesson is clear to all of you. Thank you everyone.